Hello and welcome to Cancelled Movie Report, the documentary podcast series that talks about the best movies that Hollywood never made. My name is Michael Campbell, but you can call me Cambo. And joining me for this week is two people that are very close to my heart because, fun fact, they were the first in-studio guests we ever had on this show. From the amazing and the very popular Escape This podcast, we have Dani Siller.
Hello, hello.
And Bill Sunderland.
G'day. How you going?
Oh, you've come in very Australian, Bill.
I don't know. It happens sometimes.
I wasn't ready for that.
I like the representation. I tell you who this will thrill is the person who requested this, who is Noah Ray from Maryland in the USA. Getting a little bit of Australian flavour for their request already, so they'll be enjoying that.
There you go.
Now, we're talking about a pretty requested project for us, but also one of the older projects we've ever done. We're going back into the 1970s for this report, and it's an adaptation of Lord of the Rings. When I invited you on, Dani, you said that you guys are quite, I think you said ring heads. Is that right?
That sounds like something I would have said. Lord of the Rings was the first movie as a child that I ever became full-on obsessed with.
Wow, okay. This is going to probably seem like sacrilege to you then.
I read some of the scripts before. I think I read about maybe the equivalent of Fellowship of the Ring levels. And look, I will say it was fascinating. I can't wait to get into this.
And what about you, Bill? Are you also a big Lord of the Rings fan?
I think so. I feel like I read Lord of the Rings, and if someone was like, "Oh, tell me all the scenes in the books that are different from the movies," I would say, "I don't remember. That's just a thing that exists somewhere in the miasma of my memory." But no, I love the movies, read the books, and I used to play a lot of Middle-earth based role-playing games as a kid.
Yeah, so you have a lot of lore knowledge that people don't.
Yeah, and I don't know where it comes from. I'll sit there and be like, "Oh, Saruman, you mean the necromancer of Mirkwood?" It's not helpful to anybody. So, but I don't know. I feel like engaging with the full narrative of Lord of the Rings, I haven't done for a while. So I'm sure there's lots of stuff that I've completely forgotten where you'll go, "Look at this crazy thing they tried to do in the 70s. I'll be like, "This seems right to me." Yeah. Gandalf just stabbing everybody. Barrow Whites. I remember those guys. Okay.
I want to preface this by saying that this project is often cited as one of the great, dodged bullets of cinema. People, when this script leaked, people are not a fan of this script because it goes some wild places. So with that in mind, let's get into the report about John Boorman's Lord of the Rings. What if one of the most beloved fantasy epics of all time had been adapted as a single, surreal, and controversial film in the 1970s? In 1970, acclaimed filmmaker John Boorman was tasked with bringing J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings to life on the big screen. But instead of a faithful, sweeping trilogy we know from Peter Jackson, Boorman envisioned something radically different. A single film blending psychological drama, surrealism, and stark deviations from the text. So, I will say you guys have both done some voice work for this script. So you've seen little peeks at the script. But there's a weird history to how we even got to this. So before we even talk about who John Boorman is and why he was adapting it, I thought I would provide a little bit of context about how it even got to that point.
Yeah, that's great, because all I know about previous Lord of the Rings things is this faint background knowledge about the Beatles trying to do something.
You've preempted my next point.
Hey!
So by the late 1960s, Lord of the Rings was a bit of a pop culture phenomenon, particularly amongst college students and the countercultural movements. But United Artists, they acquired the film rights in 1969, recognizing that there was a potential for a large screen cinematic adaptation. But during this time where the rights were in flux and before UA had full control, the previously mentioned Beatles had one more film left on a film contract that they had to fulfill. And they thought, we love Lord of the Rings. Could we make Lord of the Rings as one of our films? And they envisioned it as a Beatles musical. So this is at the height of their fame, by the way. Like, this is when they're doing Help, they're doing Hard Day's Night. And the same thing, they wanted to adapt the whole trilogy into a single film. And they envisioned themselves, obviously, as lead roles. But this is where I find it really fascinating, how would you split up the Beatles into the members of Lord of the Rings? And let's see how it correlates to how they saw it.
Well, surely you just make them all hobbits, and then everyone else has to be someone different. Guest stars.
I believe I have heard some peculiar deviation from that, but I can't remember who went where at all. But yeah, you would naturally think that they'd want to be the four hobbit buds.
The Fab Four, the four hobbits.
Yeah.
I would say you're half right. So Paul McCartney, they envisioned as Frodo.
Sure. He's got a Frodo-esque vibe.
Yeah, certainly. And then Ringo Starr, they envisioned as Sam.
Oh, okay.
Makes perfect sense. He's like a drummer of the group, keeping the rhythm, keeping the fellowship moving along with good vibes. Classic Ringo role.
Now, George Harrison, they actually envisioned as Gandalf.
Ah,
Okay.
he's contemplative. It could work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can picture it.
He is the mysterious one of the group, I guess.
Yeah.
And this is my favorite one, is John Lennon, they envisioned as Gollum.
Yeah, I knew someone was Gollum.
And look, I know...
I couldn't remember. The most crucial part to me was I couldn't remember whether that was him self-nominating or the others unanimously voted on it.
Well, that's a good question. It never actually specifies whether he wanted to play Gollum. Now, I know that John Lennon is known for having wide, expressive eyes, but I don't know if I would necessarily call them Gollum-esque. Their idea was a musical film, blending their personalities and their music into the narrative. And they even had someone that they wanted to direct the film. And that is Stanley Kubrick.
Oh my goodness. That was the joke answer I was going to give.
Well, everything about this seems like a joke, except for the fact that it is somehow real. So the Beatles reportedly did approach Stanley Kubrick to direct it, and Kubrick declined, citing the story's unfilmable nature at the time due to technological and narrative challenges.
I mean, that's not a man to shy away from a film challenge. I'd start to believe it.
Even funnier, I think, is that Tolkien himself reportedly vetoed this idea of the Beatles. He was pretty protective of the material, and according to a report, he disliked the idea of it being turned into a pop culture spectacle by the Beatles.
Sure.
Even funnier coincidence is that Tolkien purchased a house on Oxford Stamford's Road in a cul-de-sac, which is actually down the road from where the Beatles used to rehearse.
Ah, fun. Is this why he hated the Beatles?
In 1964, he wrote a letter to Christopher Breathleton complaining that a house 3 doors down dwells a member of a group of young men who are evidently aiming to turn themselves into a Beatle group. On days it falls to his turn to have practice sessions, the noise is indescribable. So they were never getting him across the line. They were ruining his Sunday afternoons, I guess. That's just a funny aside I wanted to get out of the way, because that is, I guess, a legend that people are aware of, is the Beatles wanted to make it. That's that project. So in October 1969, Tolkien sold the film rights to Lord of the Rings to United Artists for just over $100,000.
Which, for inflation, is $20 billion, which is kind of crazy.
Well, it's funny, even with inflation, knowing what that franchise is now, it's so undervalued. That's in 1969. Now, in 1970, the director John Boorman was approached due to his reputation for being quite a visionary and experimental filmmaker. He'd made a movie called Point Blank. Now, here's a question that you might be asking. Who's John Boorman?
Yeah, I'm getting there a little bit.
Yeah, look, he is a pretty deep-cut film bro kind of filmmaker. You know, if you're really into film, you might be aware of the works of John Boorman, but I wouldn't say it's penetrated to the everyday person knowing who he is.
I mean, he did Excalibur.
He did Excalibur.
He did Zardoz.
See, I'm not cheating. Oh, Zardoz.
He did Deliverance.
Well, this is the thing. Yes, Deliverance. I don't know if you know much about the movie Deliverance, but it is quite a harrowing, dramatic film.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard the, I suppose, joke, though pretty dark joke, of someone being nervous when they hear a banjo playing. Ding, 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 ding,
Oh, that's the one. Okay, yeah.
That comes from Deliverance, because when the man hears that sound, he knows he's in trouble.
Gotcha.
But this is John Boorman just before Deliverance. This is 1970. And yes, he's an experimental filmmaker. And you do mention Excalibur, and I want you to keep that in your mind, because that will come back.
Okay.
So he is also known for being able to kind of, I guess, stretch visionary techniques of the time. And his films are lauded for being quite visually striking and interesting. Here's a comparison that the film bros listening to this are going to hate, so I'm going to have to explain myself.
Sure.
But I liken it to, think of it this way, is John Boorman was a little bit like the Zack Snyder of his time.
All right.
And what I mean by that is Zack Snyder's clearly influenced by John Boorman, because when John Boorman adapts something, he makes it darker, sexier, a little bit more twisted. And that's very much what Zack Snyder does with these DC movies and whatever. It's always like, but what if Batman was a hard drinker and sleeping with women and had abs and all this kind of stuff? John Boorman, maybe a little bit more respectfully, does the same thing.
The original script for Deliverance was just a really nice canoe ride down a river.
So, is to say that if John Boorman's adapting something, it's going to get dark and sexy.
Okay.
That is a comparison that we need to make. So, according to Boorman, I was always actually very interested in the Arthurian legend, the Grail legend, and I went to United Artists in 1969 with this idea. And they said, well, we have Lord of the Rings, why don't you do that? Because Tolkien drew Arthurian legend quite heavily. That's how they pitched it to him.
Okay.
So that's what he said during a recent film festival appearance that he had. So he actually never went in wanting to do Lord of the Rings. He wanted to make an Arthurian film. But they had the rights to a popular medieval book. So Boorman accepted, and he partnered with his friend Rosbo Pallenberg, an aspiring writer, and they developed a screenplay all throughout 1970. And Boorman moved into Pallenberg's home in Ireland, and together they spent 6 months immersed in Tolkien's world. This is how he described it: delving with dwarves, wallowing with Gollum, and tamping Middle-earth with Bilbo. But most of all, Gandalf filled my life. He was, after all, Merlin in another guise.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I just put in unrelated Lord of the Rings facts here?
Absolutely.
I
That's what
find
you're
it
here
very
for.
interesting because one of the first references to like a lot of Middle-earthy things, Numenor, and I think possibly even the term Middle-earth, appeared before Lord of the Rings in a book by C.S. Lewis.
Really?
Where he referenced Numenor and Middle-earth and all these other things from the mouth of Merlin, talking about like, oh, you'll find out, like, let me tell you about Numenor and all this stuff, and all this Middle-earth lore that Merlin says in, I think, That Hideous Strength by C.S. Lewis. And he writes a little like note in the forward of like, and if you want to know more about Middle-earth, wait for this upcoming book by my good friend J.R.R. Tolkien. And he'll fill in all the rest of the details. So there was clearly an Arthurian connection there as well. I just found that interesting to talk about it.
Really interesting. And why would you have that as an off-the-cuff fact?
The book's on my shelf over there. It was the third in the Perelandra trilogy. It's a whole big thing.
Wow. Okay. Now, Dani, you do a mind-blowing fact with equal fascination. No, I'm joking.
I also knew 2/3 of that fact.
So, yes, Boorman, he was attracted to the Arthurian side of this. So their goal was an ambitious single film adaptation, condensing the entire trilogy into roughly a 2.5-hour movie. And they felt that they'd crafted a script that was, as in their words, fresh and cinematic, yet carried the spirit of Tolkien. And we will debate once we start hearing the story whether we agree with that. And it is a big script. It is about 180 pages long. And the rough guide, they say, is a minute per page. So we're looking at probably well over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, like closer, I guess, to 3 hours with this script.
Yeah.
Chunky for a movie, piddling for Lord of the Rings.
That's a good way to put it, actually, yes. So even though it took great liberties with the source material, UA supported the development phase and they had budgeted funds put aside for it. And Boorman hired a small design and production team to assist with the script breakdowns and the cost estimates at this point. In an interview with Boorman, he was asked about the relationship with Tolkien. He said, "I didn't meet him. I corresponded with him. He was reluctant to have the film made at all. It was only to secure the education of his grandchildren that he agreed to sell the film rights. He wrote to me and asked me how I was going to make it live action or animated, and I told him it was going to be with actors. He wrote back saying, 'I'm so relieved because I had a nightmare that this thing would be an animated film.'"
Okay.
I know where this is going.
I love that there will be people, even if you don't know the history of this, that are like, well, okay, I clearly see what's going to happen here at the end. So they also they did some effects tests and they drew up production plans. For example, they brainstormed how to depict the hobbits via forced perspective using tricks. And this is actually how they ended up doing it in Peter Jackson's film. And by July in 1970, a draft script is completed. They had breakdowns for sets ready. They had some budgets ready for battles, and some effects tests were underway.
Oh.
And this is where they start talking about casting. Boorman envisioned a mix of star power for key roles like Gandalf and Aragorn, along with unknown actors for the hobbits. So no Beatles inside.
Sure.
No one was officially cast, but names like Vincent Price and Christopher Lee were floated for potential involvement. And this was, I believe there was rumors with Christopher Lee having been a choice for Gandalf for many years. So then when they eventually made the movie, he had unfortunately aged out of that role, which apparently he was kind of upset about, that he knew that people had wanted him. He obviously would fit it like a glove, where he, 15, 20 years younger than he was at the time. And he is also the only person in the Lord of the Rings films that actually met J.R. Tolkien in real life. So, with all of this in mind, I do want to point out to people that the reason we're doing this as a single longer episode rather than two-parter is a majority of this story is just Lord of the Rings as you know it. And we're going into this with the intention that you've probably either seen the movie, read the book, or ideally maybe even both like you, Bill. But you don't need to really dig down in this script. What we're going to do instead is recap the story briefly and pause when it starts to veer into the weird territories.
Sure.
So with all of that in mind, guys, do you want to hear what John Boorman's Lord of the Rings was going to be? The story begins in the Shire. But it's not the charming, polished vision that we know from the films that we did get. This is something a little bit stranger and more dreamlike. And it's even described as having an undercurrent of danger. Bilbo Baggins is turning 111 and the hobbits are celebrating. There's food and drink and fireworks. But there's also something else. There's a tension beneath all of this, and Bilbo is tired. He's holding on to the golden ring he's had for too long. And tonight, he's going to let it go. Sort of. He vanishes in front of everyone during his birthday party. Not just a trick, but truly disappears. It's clear that the ring is more than just a party gag. Now, Gandalf confronts Bilbo at his Bag End home and demands he leaves it behind, and the two nearly come to blows in this script. It's a much more tense scene in this version than it is in the book or the one we got. The ring has held on to Bilbo, and when he finally drops it on the ground, it burns the floorboards beneath him.
Nice.
Gandalf knows it's serious. He leaves Frodo with it and goes to confirm his suspicions, meeting with a man named Saruman. But Saruman, in Boorman's vision, is less a wizened manipulator, more of a haunting, all-seeing creature. The physical representation of power corrupted is kind of how it's explained. Gandalf is imprisoned in a surreal tower of shifting light and fire. Back at the Shire, Frodo is getting nervous. The ring is whispering. The world is closing in. So he leaves, joined by Sam, Merry, and Pippin to begin their journey to go and find Gandalf and what's happened to the ring. He's obviously had the fundamental understanding that he needs to get it to Rivendell somehow. Now, up until now, the film is pretty much as we imagine the story in the other films, right?
Largely,
Small differences, the ring burning the hole in the floor, things like that. This is one of the first differences we're going to come across now after the hobbits leave the Shire onto their adventure. Because this is where the first song appears.
Ooh.
Yes, this is what I was waiting for. Definitely the big thing that I noticed.
As they walk along, they are singing a song. And as they're singing a song, they come across some interesting fauna that might warp their perspective on things. I'll put it that way. Now, I will state, we haven't created the entire song. I just wanted to give people a small snippet of what some of this might sound like.
A road goes ever on and on, away from the door where it began. The ones who walk before are gone. Hobbit, elf, dwarf, and apple and thorn, nut and slow. Let them go, let them go.
Their path crosses the brow of a hill where they come upon an orchard of full apple blossom. The wind swirls the white petals around them like a snowstorm. The path leads them out of the swirling petals into a field covered with mushrooms. The hobbits are delighted. They set to, picking and eating them as fast as they can. They begin to laugh and giggle, becoming rather unsteady on their feet. They lurch on their way with contented smiles on their faces. The world looks a little misty, different.
The road goes ever on and on. Where will it lead? On and on. A shadow falls across our way. We must go on. We cannot stay. Trees and flower and leaf and rust. Let them pass. Let them pass.
Suddenly, they're in a field full of buttercups. Naked children run and play along the golden flowers. The hobbits blink and grin merry bleachers. They are now in a vast ploughed field. There are perhaps 50 scarecrows, very nasty faces and scraggly arms, fluttering in the wind. They hurry on, somewhat sobered. The four hobbits walk through the long grass, just their heads showing. Suddenly, the hobbits are confronted with a line of big people, cutting the grass with scythes. Startled, the hobbits scuttle back.
It must be the heat, or did I just see an Arfling?
Arfling? Where? There's a reward if you catch one.
Sam, Merry, and Pippin scurry away, breaking through the long grass further down, hiding behind a haystack. But Frodo lags behind, a little smirk on his face. He jumps out over the scythe blade and struts up to one of the men, continuing to sing.
Oh, I'm a hobbit of the Shire. Am I the halfling you desire? Oh, reapers of the hay. Oh, reapers of dismay.
Frodo leaps into the air, doing a somersault, and puts on the ring, vanishing in midair. Frodo materializes behind the haystack, ring in hand with Sam, Merry, and Pippin. That is not even the entire song, by the way. This song goes for quite a while through the script. It's like pages and pages of their weird mushroom delusional visions that they're starting to have.
It's certainly some things that feel very 1970. We can't deny that, especially the musical style, which, like, Lord of the Rings has always been musical.
Yes.
There's no argument there.
I think there's an argument to say that the movies that we got were not musical enough
Yeah.
for the books Lord of the Rings, where every few pages, like, and here's a song I wrote. Here it is.
There are at least some deleted scenes that included more doing them as poetry, and there was still a little bit of song that we got in the movies, but definitely some things that got cut. So I totally get the idea of sticking more to music and saying that feels like a more inherent part of it. I just didn't expect the folksy soft rock.
Yeah, well, the thing is, look, part of this is also interpretation, obviously. All the lyrics and all the screen direction and stuff are all from the script, but there are context clues in the writing about the style they're going for. And more so even later in the script, definitely there's some indications of style that they were going for. And it seemed like they were trying to mix some contemporary in with the, the more traditional Tolkien elements. But even through this, we have kaleidoscopic imagery, and it kind of like shifting through shadows and strange whispers, and the script starts to kind of turn even weirder and darker during this song as it continues.
There's also like a fundamental turning point in this song where up until he pops out onto the scythe, it's like it's a song that, like, in universe they might be singing. Yeah, we're doing it's a walking song like it is in the books. It's the road goes on, like the road goes on and on is
that's from the book.
From the books, it's like road goes on and on. We're singing a little song. We're walking down. This isn't great. And as soon as he turns to another character, he's like, Hey, I'm Frodo. I'm from the Shire. It's like, that's a musical. You turned it into a musical suddenly. That's
Yeah.
a whole different thing. That's now, he's just singing. Like, now it's not like a guy singing a song. That's a musical.
What also happens in this musical, and I like to think that it is that same early 70s soft rock style, but Frodo starts to see some darker visions during his mushroom trip.
Yeah.
So he starts seeing like kind of allusions to the Nazgul and the ring wraiths and these darker creatures that might be kind of coming after him in the ring. However, eventually they reach Bree and the Prancing Pony. And even here, nothing feels quite as grounded. The patrons leer and they also sing strange songs in the taverns. The entire inn is almost like a fever dream of grotesque faces and long shadows and all this kind of odd, dark, more gothic kind of vibe to it.
Fair.
My brain is just filling in all the scenes from Over the Garden Wall. There's just the I'm the Highwayman and all the various little songs there, which I'm assuming is not how it's written. But
No,
in my heart,
that
my
is
heart of heart.
exactly how it appears at the script.
Good.
But it is here, like in the other story, that they meet Strider. He's not quite the rugged ranger of the books. He's described as more primal, dirty. He's more animalistic in this one. He's a bit more kind of angry and shorter fuse, but still noble, but wild. In fact, he's described as almost mythic.
Okay.
So the group flees again, pursued by ringwraiths, and Frodo is stabbed on Weathertop as in the other versions. The attack on Weathertop is more terrifying in this version. It becomes kind of a surreal horror scene in this version. The Nazgul, they appear as skeletal and decayed, and their presence is very overwhelming for Frodo, and his mind is being suffocated like a force.
More than fair.
Yeah,
That's
I think
fine.
yeah.
I'm happy with these ring wraiths. They're wraiths.
And I can
Let 'em be
totally
what they
picture the style of John Boorman working for a scene like this.
Sure.
His visuals would work really well. So when Frodo's stabbed, the wound starts to pulsate, kind of a light coming out of it, kind of symbolizing this weird connection to the blades that stabbed him and the ring and all of this kind of ethereal darkness. Ironic that it's a light representing that. But he nearly dies. Strider races to get him to Rivendell. Now let's talk about Rivendell, because I don't know if you got this far, Daddy.
I did.
So this, I would say, represents one of the bigger diversions in the book, not even in plot, just in representation.
Oh, what's going
More
on with
than
Rivendell?
fair. Oh, it's quite something.
Danny, how would you represent the Council of Rivendell in this version?
Rivendell, I didn't originally envision it as a circus, but there's definitely circus.
Yes. So essentially, we get all of the information that we always get at the Council of Rivendell, except for it is a huge theatrical production. So we've got singers, we've got circus performers, all wrapped
Performing dogs.
wrapped up in a style that they describe as kabuki theater.
Okay.
Now, again, I haven't created the entire Council of Elrond, but I have got a section of the Council of Elrond to give you an idea of how this information in this version is represented.
3 rings for the other kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for the mortal men doomed to die. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 for the Dark Lord is dark throne.
A group of actors in costumes and masks, a motley assortment representing the beings of Middle-earth, mount the table, preceded by a ring juggler performing deftly with 3 glass rings, shimmering with colours, followed by dwarves and a midget juggler, being harassed by a dragon, which the other dwarves attempt to fight off. A character who is a combination of Mick Jagger and Punch leaps up onto the table. He's dressed in white in a strange robe of pleats. Whenever the pleats splay open, dark garnish colours burst forth. He struts menacingly along the table.
I am Sauron, Lord of Wandering.
7, I lost the none to see. Survive them, bring them, rule them, fight them.
Rings of power. Rings of power. Rings of power.
So, just to let you know, they explain the entire history of Middle Earth and the Rings of Power in this way. This keeps going. As Dani, you alluded
It's
to,
really long.
there's performing dogs. At one point, Elrond gets up and does like a speech in the middle of the performance that's not a song. It goes back and forth between circus and song and tricks and kabuki theater. It's it's extremely weird.
I love that, like, Tolkien is sitting there being like, I'm glad I didn't let the Beatles do their ridiculous version full of modern pop music and
Mick Jagger.
Yes,
that's where it's at.
let's see if this version's any better.
I need to stress that is not an invention by me. In the script, they describe him as being like Mick Jagger.
I also love that they're like, how are we going to get the hobbits? We'll just get kind of short people. We'll do forced perspective. We'll do all this. We'll do this. Some dwarves. Just get a guy with dwarfism. Get the smallest man in the world. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's how you're going to do the dwarves? They're just dwarves. What do you care? Very strange to have that in there.
That's true. I hadn't considered that, but yeah, it is a weird double standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a pretty wild scene. This is a scene that often gets brought up when people discuss this version of Lord of the Rings because it's a big swing. I'll put it that way.
But especially when, like, that monologue, that let me list for you the rings and who got them is such an iconic opening, intense moment from the movies that we ended up with. Like, picturing, remember that speech. Remember, all of that, like, open the and all this sort of stuff that's been covered. It's like, whatever, we'll just do like a fun bit.
Whatever the 1970s theatrical production.
It's such a stark contrast.
We're pretty reasonably enthusiastic about musical theater, but around that time when people were doing movies of the big musical shows that you know about, this definitely feels like it fits that vibe more than any of the other scenes. This definitely fits that. Like, I'm getting Joseph vibes. I'm getting JCS vibes.
Elrond obviously explains the rise of Sauron and the forging of the rings and whatnot, as he normally does. And we see here that the ring is calling to Boromir as well. And it's a very, very tense scene towards the end of this council. But Frodo steps forward, says, I will take the ring. And they forge the Fellowship of the Ring. So their path takes them into the mines of Moria. And it's here that we see some of the darker tones of John Boorman start to come out, because the entrance to Moria is sealed by magic, and no one can remember the password.
Oh, that's right.
I'm pretty sure you just speak friend and enter, don't you?
Yes, that is how it's written. But how would you remember how to speak friend, Bill? That's the real question.
There's no way of knowing.
Gandalf does take an interesting tact in the script to open the door. So I just want to present to you the Fellowship now arriving at the door of Moria trying to enter. And I'm going to say Gandalf's questionable treatment of Gimli in this scene.
Moria!
Steps to the great door. Here, elves and dwarves traded together in better days.
It was not the fault of the dwarves that the friendship waned.
I have not heard that it was the fault of elves.
I have heard both, and will hear no more.
Well, that was a long climb for nothing. They must have taken the door with them when they left.
The emblems of the ancient kingdom of Moria.
What does it say?
It says, sing, friend, and enter.
You speak the ancient dwarf tongue.
Read it, not speak it.
Sing, friend, and enter?
But of course, Mr. Frodo. You sing the word friend, and the magical dwarvish door shall open. Isn't that so, Gimli? Gimli, sing friend in your ancient tongue.
My ancestors were driven from Moria. The ancient tongue is lost.
A few trials shall open it.
If a great wizard cannot open the door, let's see if it will withstand the voice of Minas Tirith.
Boromir takes his horn from its sheath.
Only Gimli has the memory to open the door. You greedy dwarves!
Gandalf grabs Gimli and thrusts him into a spiky bush. He slides to the ground, brandishing his axe.
Greedy dwarves! Just dig for your precious metals! Dig, you greedy dwarves!
Gimli begins cutting into the ground with his axe, chopping through the rocks, working with an animal fury.
Greed!
Dig! Delve into the depths of the earth, greedy dwarves!
Gandalf strikes Gimli with his staff. Gandalf swirls off his cloak and casts it onto Gimli, covering him. In the darkness, Gimli goes on digging frantically.
And the greedy dwarves delved too deep into the bowels of the earth and stirred evil things. And from the abyss and the eternal darkness, monsters arose and drove the dwarves from Moria.
Gimli seems like he's frantically attempting to escape, as if reliving the ancestral memories that Gandalf is recalling.
And a terrible monster rose out from the depths.
Gandalf whips his cloak away and onto his back. Gimli rises to his feet, waist deep now in a hole.
Thank me not, Gimli, until I can thank you. Open the door to Moria.
Gimli walks to the door, stamps his feet, and begins dancing.
And the mountain cracks open.
In the rock face, the shape of a door appears.
Too soon on this journey, I have called up the very roots of my powers. I fear that when greater challenges come, I may be used up.
The fuck was that?
Horrible foreshadowing.
So Gandalf's like, okay, we need to know the ancient Dwarven word for friend.
Yes.
Which I can read, but I couldn't tell you how to pronounce it.
Couldn't pronounce it.
Okay, whatever. And then they go, well, Gimli, you're a dwarf. You know ancient Dwarvish. To which he says, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Like, we forgot the language.
Correct.
We don't know ancient Dwarvish. It's like I've never learned the language. To which Gandalf's like, well, you're a dwarf. It's probably in there anyway.
Yeah.
Just psychologically abuses him to get his repressed racial memory, which he can only do by using his wizard power. This is magic. This couldn't just normally happen.
Now, I don't want to downplay the beating as well.
Yeah, of course. Just like beating the dwarf, like calling him an ugly, greedy dwarf, greedy little dwarf. And then he's like, oh, thanks, Gandalf. Now I know the ancient language of my people. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I also want to give credit to Peter Broughton is playing Gandalf for us. What a performance.
Amazing. Both of them did so well.
Sometimes you just need to say, I know this is weird, but go with us here. And God, did he deliver that performance as well. Amazing stuff.
And then, but also, that's like the huge limits of like, I yelled at a dwarf and I hit him with my stick. My powers are depleted. If I get attacked by a Balrog in the next 20 minutes, oh boy, I'm dead.
It was interesting interesting the different directions that writers have taken to go with this.
Yeah.
Like in the movies that we got, it was Gandalf's just stumped until Frodo comes up with the answer that it's a funny riddle.
Yeah, and Gandalf's like, I know that word.
In the original book,
it's Elvish.
It's been,
Elvish, yeah.
It's been a long while, but I feel like in the original book, they sit there and they just sit there for hours until Gandalf himself says, "Oh, right, I get it now. How funny."
I love some kind of older writing like that can be just a bit anticlimactic. It's like, oh, I did remember the answer, actually.
Yep.
Not a problem. So they enter the mines of Moria. They descend into the darkness, and in Moria, the air is kind of thick with, it's described as ancient grief.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I'm not even done with that scene because what's the pacing of the thing? Like before, we kind of figure out, oh, they dug too deep and they revealed the Balrog when the Balrog appears, and it's all like, but instead we have before that, Gandalf's like, by the way, before we go in, just remember, the dwarves dug too deep. They uncovered a monster. The monster's the Balrog. He's in there.
This
it's going to be
place
scary.
we're going as hell,
Let's just get all that out there now so that in a few minutes we can maybe react to it later. That's just, what's the pacing? Why would you want to put that out there in just Gandalf whipping a little dwarf man? Okay, I'm back. I'm back.
You're never going to believe what happens next with all of that context. They go into the tomb. The drums begin to beat. The screams are echoing in the dark. They're not alone. From the shadows emerges a horror. What do you think that could be?
There's no way of knowing.
It sounds like it's the Saruman beast from earlier, right?
It is the Balrog.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
I watched the first Lord of the Rings movie in a small theatre in regional New South Wales that still had intermissions every time it did a movie. And so my experience of the Balrog, because it is like right in the middle, is like, bumper, bumper, it's here. The Balrog. Intermission. Everyone goes outside. Everyone's buying popcorn, being like, what the hell's a Balrog? What the heck's going on? What's about to... It was a really good moment. I really liked it. And I think more movies should bring back intermissions. I think it was a well-placed one.
That's the intermission point, is it? Oh, yeah, that's
the
great.
Balrog. Boom.
Yeah, great.
Intermission, go buy some more Choc Tops.
So I also am curious to how in 1970 they would have done the Balrog.
Because it wasn't... in 2001, it felt special.
He is described as a flaming monster. And part of me thinks they just would have lit a dude on fire. Like put big kind of stilts and prosthetics and then just lit that shit on fire.
It does feel worth being suspicious of. We might just have a big cavernous burning man.
Yeah, like what have we seen up into that? But like 1970, we're pre-Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where are we at with visual effects and making a big monster appear? Would it just be it?
Visual effects and making a big monster appear would be two separate roads where they are at the moment. Visual effects have been revolutionized at this point already by 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
So that was in the late 1960s.
That's fair.
So I can understand the idea of being like, well, now think of what we can do now that we know what is possible. But at no point, maybe I'm remembering the film wrong. At no point do I think a giant flame monster appears in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So we don't know what that technology was up to.
Fire feels like it's been a difficult one for people. And maybe it's just a lot of people in TV and whatever cheaping out. But I feel like until almost everything that I saw until Lord of the Rings was just, look what we can make a computer do now. It totally looks like fair flames. And you could just tell that they were just sort of PowerPoint presentationed on top of whatever that you had.
I would love more documentation to come out about whatever their plans were for the Balrog, because this is one I'm most curious about. You can dress some up as an elf. You can do an invisibility effect. All of that you could do with the technology of that time. Balrog, I'm not so sure about. So on the bridge, Gandalf faces it down, shouts, "You shall not pass." And we have that entire kind of moment in Boorman's version. And the Balrog drags Gandalf down from the bridge, as happens in the story. With his final words still being, "Fly, you fools." So they flee, broken, weeping, into the golden light of Lothlorien.
Yeah.
It's here that the film takes a turn for the, I'm going to say, hornier.
Oh.
I also need to introduce this with an apology to you, Dani, because people will obviously recognize you from being on the show before, but I don't know if they're as aware that you guys do a lot of voice work for this show.
Yep.
And I have a tendency when I have something that I don't want to have to explain to a stranger, I come to you guys and I say, hey, I got a weird one for you. And all that to say is that, Dani, you were a champ because you have helped with the scene we're about to hear.
I think the stage directions did most of the heavy lifting of the weird, so it was okay.
The Lothlorien scene in the Peter Jackson movie is quite tranquil, but a little bit spooky, and not nearly horny enough, in my opinion. So it's described as kind of time slowing, trees almost singing, stars shimmering as they enter, and Galadriel, she greets them, serene and terrifying all at once. And the script frames her as, she is beautiful with an awesome presence. Her beauty is not of this earth. Her golden hair falls to her feet. She is not young, and yet she is never aged. Her voice is rich, musical, and curiously deep. Boorman's Galadriel is described as being deeply sensual, poignant, and physically overwhelming. And she is explicitly described as having an erotic charge.
Okay.
And the script really leans into this sexual, metaphysical tension between her and Frodo.
Okay.
So she sees into each of them, but it's Frodo that she truly speaks to. Galadriel leads Frodo away from the others, off to look into the mirror, the silver basin that will show him his future. As the others go and camp in Lothlorien, kind of waiting for this. And it is this scene that now takes a slight turn from the one you know. So this is how Galadriel convinces Frodo to look into the mirror.
You shall look into the mirror, and you alone.
In a soft space defined by drapes at the summit of a great tent, Galadriel and Frodo are seated on the floor of carpets and cushions. Between them is a small silver basin on a tripod. In the basin there is water.
I look and I see nothing.
You look and you see nothing, for you are not yet ready.
When? When shall I be ready? And how?
With knowledge. And I am that knowledge.
I don't know what questions I shall ask.
Your eyes ask questions already.
Accepting the invitation, his eyes wander over her body, drinking in her loveliness. Frodo looks again at the reflection in the basin and sees their two faces coming together. Back with the rest of the fellowship now.
Galadriel, what a mighty piece of stone she is. For a dwarfish tool to carve.
She wants to read our thoughts for her own good purposes. We may be safe from orcs tonight, but I fear for the ring. I fear for Frodo. I fear for the ring.
What's holding Frodo? Why doesn't he come?
Galadriel.
To evil ways this company has been led. I shall take the south bank to the great river and go to Minas Tirith. It is my duty. It is folly to enter Mordor without a great army.
Folly may also be our duty. I shall take the north bank to Mordor. Tonight, Frodo can fend for himself. And for once we may sleep in peace.
Oh, why did I come on this quest? I saw Moria overrun by orc, and Gandalf fall. And now, I see beauty, and even that is taken from me.
Alas for us all, but Gimli, memory shall be your reward.
Memory is not what I ache for, dear Legolas.
We're in a lake at dawn. Galadriel and Frodo are floating in the waters of the pool.
I will look into the mirror. I am ready. I feel ready.
Galadriel's hair drifts through the water and rests on Frodo's chest. Frodo looks at the ring, fascinated.
So you see it. It is one of the elven rings of power that are hidden. but it cannot be hidden from the bearer of the one who will know the eye.
You are wise and fearless. To you, the ring should be entrusted.
He takes off the ring and hands it to her, but Frodo does not release the chain. She handles it, about to put it on. She holds it against the elven ring to see how they look together. An ugly grimace comes over her face. She's afraid, trembles. Frodo quickly pulls back the chain.
I cannot give it, and you cannot bear it.
If you fail in your quest, we are laid bare to the enemy. But if you succeed and destroy the ring, our powers will fade too, and the elves will dwindle to a rustic folk of dell and cave, slowly to forget and to be forgotten.
No, never will the power of the elves die. For what I felt in you is the stuff of all which life is made.
After we have gone, our powers may find a small place in the hearts of women. In other women, you will remember me. In them, men will sometimes find a fleeting vision of what we were. Now the world is full of peril. Love is now mingled with grief. With grief, love grows perhaps the greater.
Suddenly, within the wild landscapes before them, an opening appears, and the flaps of the tent are thrown aside. The Fellowship stands in the doorway.
I say we take the west bank.
The north bank should be our course. Frodo.
I have looked into the mirror.
The fuck was that?
Yeah, it felt like that the first time that I read it too.
Yeah, more central, certainly.
Yeah, and like
there's one way to get Frodo to see the vision, I guess, in John Boorman's mind.
And then just like the idea of like, but elves are so lovely and wonderful, they could never disappear. Well, I suppose our power will live on in just women.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you'll be having sex with a woman, you're like, whoa,
the elves.
Elvish. That's what it's going to be like in the real world, in which you, the viewer, is living. It's kind of an odd message.
Yeah. It's very odd. This is an element of the script that a lot of people have a lot of issue with. It might not surprise you to learn. After all of that, the film continues as the story normally does. The Fellowship kind of begins to crack. Boromir finally succumbs to the ring's lure and he attacks Frodo. Frodo runs off with Sam in tail, and the others all splinter. And Aragorn is actually left with Merry and Pippin in this version.
We've hit the point where I started tailing off, so I'm now getting ready to be surprised.
I'm glad that this is the point that you tailed off, because this is where some of the biggest changes actually happen. Because Boromir's attempt to take the ring is violent and desperate in this version. It is quite scary. It is, I mean, it's not quite the Deliverance John Boorman, but it is not a playful scene. He really does try and take the ring.
Cool.
And it's saying that he's fully consumed by the ring at this point. But his death in this is in no way redemptive either. He dies racked with shame and unable to make amends.
Okay.
You might be thinking, we're like a fair distance into this film at this point, and you might be thinking, this has largely been the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. You got to fit 2 more books in here.
This is largely where they, I'm going to say, speed run Lord of the Rings at this point. So Frodo and Sam kind of near Mordor, and the world, it's described as literally warping at points. So the landscapes are getting weirder, skies are twisted, and nothing feels right anymore. And Gollum is actually barely a character in this. You kind of get fleeting glimpses of him following Sam and Frodo up until this point, and he is seen as a kind of a glimpse of what Frodo will become if he doesn't get rid of the ring. That is driven home pretty heavily in this script.
Sure.
So yes, Gollum is only in a couple of scenes with almost no dialogue, but a persistent stalker rather than the ominous figure that is with them on their journey. At no point does he say "my precious" either.
What? That's Gollum's big line. Does he at least eat the fish?
He doesn't even say what's taters, precious.
Ah.
And a lot of Gollum's like kind of verbal tics and personality are almost entirely stripped away as well. He's a shell of a character in this. But his obsession with the ring is still there, and it is presented quite visually, like his eyes fixating and twitching on the ring a lot when you see him. So the story follows Frodo and Sam almost exclusively after the breaking of the Fellowship. We do see the other characters in part, but it very much becomes Frodo and Sam's movie.
Sure.
And the War for Middle-earth is more implied as a background to that than the big epic battles that we do see.
Okay, sure.
Frodo and Sam's confrontation with Shelob is an extended horror sequence.
Nice.
And Aragorn's arc is dramatically reduced at this point as well. He becomes a mythic figure that they hear about on adventures, helping them more than anything else. He's not really the military leader of men. Here are the things that are not in it.
Sure.
There's no Battle of Helm's Deep. There's no Rohirrim.
Okay.
There's no Treebeard or Fanghorn Forest.
Excellent.
All right.
Instead, the story cuts straight to the battle at the end at the Black Gate with the other figures. So they have also just, I guess, continued to trudge on to Mordor as well.
Look, people always say that the middle of a trilogy is a dip, so why not cut it all?
Especially because this does feel like it is just, let's ignore all the side stories between Frodo and Sam, and for them, none of that other stuff happened.
Yes.
They just walked and walked and walked, and then there was a battle nearby.
And ultimately,
That's what we're gonna do.
the final battle was at the gates of Mordor. So, yes, they have streamlined it quite significantly. So, at the Black Gate, standing before them is not actually a great army. It's Saruman. And Sauron. Sauron has returned. And we actually get a battle between him and Gandalf that plays at the same time that Frodo and Sam enter Mount Doom. So as Frodo reaches Mount Doom, he stands on the edge, the ring pulses in his hand, and he hesitates to throw it in. He doesn't want to throw it in. And this is when Gollum has his big scene in the script, where he creeps up and he attacks Frodo. Gollum bites the ring with Frodo's finger, and that whole situation turns up exactly as it does.
Okay.
All right.
But back at the Black Gate, we see the battle continue between Gandalf and Saruman. And what follows is not a fight in the traditional sense. It's more of a battle of poetry. And this is how the battle goes.
I am the mouth of sound.
Saruman! Don't you remember your name? Is such the power of the Dark Lord over you? We meet again, Saruman, of many colors.
Of many colors and many powers.
Saruman, I am the snake about to strike.
I am the staff that crushes the snake.
I am the fire that burns the staff to ashes.
I am the cloudburst that quenches the fire.
I am the well that traps the waters.
I am... just words.
But words are part of everything, as water, seeds, and blood. Saruman, I say to you, the king has returned.
It takes more to make a king than armor and elven polish and a rabble such as this.
Aragorn the king wields a power which Sauron has lost and has not found.
I spit on your big bear.
Silence!
I see. He was dear to you. Was his errand one you hoped would not fail?
Frodo is dead. Our little spy in the vast and terrible land of Mordor.
That little brat from the rat hole son.
So it's here that you get the earth-shattering trembles of the ring having been destroyed in the background during this battle. And it starts to seep in. So it actually happens at the end of their weird kind of poetry battle that they're having.
That's okay. They needed something to interrupt the very primary school. Oh, yeah, but I have fire.
Oh, yeah, but I'm the cloud that puts out the fire.
So instead of a volcanic eruption, or I should say just a simple volcanic eruption, the destruction of the ring sends waves of golden light across the world. And it's reshaping kind of reality. Things are becoming greener again, and you know, the darkness of the world is lifting. And the elves begin to fade immediately from being...
Oh, just straight up.
Straight up. But don't worry, we'll remember them in women.
Yeah. I've kissed a woman before. I know what an elf is.
So they begin to fade, turning translucent as their powers vanish. Aragorn watches in both triumph and sadness, realizing that the world of myth is ending. And in the final moments, Frodo's departure from Middle-earth is kind of a surreal transition. Where in this version, he literally... We're back at the docks, as it is at the end of the film and the book. But instead, he literally walks into a white glowing light. Much like the ship eventually sails into. But it is very much seen as a metaphor for him having, again, passing on, literally walking out into the great light. As he walks into the light as he is boarding the ship to the Undying Lands. And it says with that, the age of myth ends. And that is the end of John Boorman's Lord of the Rings.
All right.
Now, it's something, you know. It's not... Some people will say that it is radically different. And I don't think it is radically different. The story is still there. It is still largely Lord of the Rings. What it does is it chops a lot out, and it just makes some really odd choices.
I am interested. Like, it is interesting. There are so many things that people say that the actual trilogy that we got didn't include, and people were shocked about it. Like, where's Tom Bombadil? Where's the sacking of the Shire? And, well, yeah, even 30 years earlier, people weren't that keen on that.
Yeah. That's true. Well, actually, you know what? Before we get into what happened, what are your thoughts about John Boorman's Lord of the Rings script?
Honestly, absolutely wild. But not the, like, it's the Lord of the Rings. This stuff happens. They fight a Balrog, they go to Moria, they see some elves. Let's skip over what they do with the elves. They, you know, there's the betrayal, there's all, and when you think about it, not as like we've shortened and cut from the trilogy, but like, no, we're just doing the Frodo bit.
Yeah.
So all of the stuff we're skipping, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what Merry sees and what Aragorn sees and what, you know, Legolas sees. We don't care about that. We're just following Frodo. And except for right at the end where we decide to swap to someone else and have Frodo in the background. But like that framing of it is like, okay, cool. That makes sense. That's a story you can tell. It's just Frodo's story.
See, if someone knew they were under the pressure to make this in a single movie, that is a decision that they would logically
that's a very
make.
smooth way, rather than trying to focus on everything and then just do too little of everything. They're just like, look, just pick on one story and do it. I love the idea of an extended kind of horror Shelob sequence. There's some of that imagery that you think, why is Sauron at the gates when he should be the big eye on top? But apparently, I'm pretty sure the eye is not in the books anyway. That's just a Peter Jackson thing. Like, put a big flaming eye up there. It'll be great.
There is also a deleted scene, I believe, in the Peter Jackson one where Sauron is at the Black Gate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there is footage. They never finished it because they knew immediately it wouldn't work. But there is footage out there of Aragorn fighting with Sauron in his armor. He's about 8 feet tall in the film at the Black Gate. And when they realized it didn't work, what they did instead is pasted over a troll on top of him. So in the film, Aragorn is fighting a troll, but that originally was shot as Sauron in his armor.
Bill, I said to you, I think yesterday, that we were coming into this recording, and I didn't want to give you any spoilers from the bits that I had read, but I don't know if you remember, I told you a one-sentence quote that summarized my feelings.
Oh no, what was your quote?
It's been one day. Come on, man.
I've been busy.
It was something along the lines of, I totally get it. I totally get how this didn't work. I do not think audiences would have been receptive to this.
Yeah. I am inclined to agree with you, Dani. So the question is, what happened? So UA, United Artists, they delayed a lot of commitments on Lord of the Rings. And this, so as you remember, this was given in 1970, this script was handed over. And by March 1971, Boorman informs Tolkien's liaisons that he's about to begin filming Deliverance, and that he still hopes that he can come back to Lord of the Rings afterwards. He hopes to have some news for him after that.
Sure.
So there's been a delay. Boorman said, I've got a film ready to go. I'm going to go do that. But in truth, the project is stalling. And UA's corporate fortunes took a real downturn around this time, leaving the studio unwilling to finance such an expensive vision. Boorman later summarized it like this. I spent a year on it. United Artists owned the rights. And at the end of the day, when I was ready with it, UA had gone into a very bad period. They didn't have the money. It was expensive, For a while, I got Disney interested in doing it, but it languished there as well. And then I told TriStar I wanted to do it. The rights were then with Sal Zance, who produced the animated version. I was authorized to offer him $1 million for the rights, but he wanted more, and TriStar wouldn't pay any more. So the original rights holders, it had lapsed in the meantime, and someone else had brought them. So they would have needed to, again, buy them back to try and make this thing. So with this, UA effectively shelved Boorman's script, unwilling to invest the required $15 million it might have needed, which at the time was a huge sum of money. A $15 million epic back in 1970 was quite a big deal. So UA finally divests most of the rights to Tolkien's work, and producer Sal Zance, who loved the books, acquired the rights. And he partners with an animator named Ralph Bakshi.
A Mr.
Bakshi, Ralph Bakshi.
And they decided to do a cheaper animated adaptation. And as part of the deal, United Artists had to pay Boorman off for his script. Reportedly, they had to pay him $3 million to secure the full artistic control of their new adaptation.
Wow.
In other words, Boorman's contract and script had to be brought so the Baski's project would proceed unencumbered with no possibility of any kind of lawsuit. Filmmaker Ralph Bakshi recalled an executive saying, "We don't want Boorman's picture. We want our $3 million back for the screenplay that we paid Boorman. If you can get our money back, you can make the picture any way you want." And this line here is effectively what absolutely doomed it to never happen. They have a new version of it now that they can do for cheaper, more animated. So in 1978, UA releases Ralph Bakshi's animated Lord of the Rings, covering roughly half of the story. It did use a new script. It didn't use the same one that Boorman did, but it was using a lot of the same structural changes that Boorman had made. And this one was instead made for a modest budget of $7 million, which still is a lot for an animated film of the time.
I feel like we should add in here that Tolkien died in the early 70s, so he didn't see this.
That is true. He actually died, about 3 or 4 years before this came out.
Yeah, just in case anyone was wondering his opinions.
But his nightmare of seeing Lord of the Rings turned into an animated film is exactly what happened.
And then he couldn't even do the sequel, and they got Rankin Bass to come in and then finish the story and just do the Return of the King part, and it went back to being a musical.
To be fair, some of those songs, I've seen, 2 5-minute clips from this Return of the King, and they stay in your head for good.
Since seeing it, every single week, I will have to walk around the house going, "Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way," which is one of the orc songs in the Rankin Bass end of the trilogy. It's just what an odd place for it to go.
Yeah, I also want to point out there is a version of Lord of the Rings that was also produced for Russian television that has one of the most horrifying golems you'll ever see. I'll post a clip of it on our social media. But the treatment of Lord of the Rings up until Peter Jackson was pretty abysmal, I'm going to say.
Fair.
Because I think it was fair for people to say that it is unfilmable, because up until about 2000 or 1999 when they started, it was unfilmable. So here's something I want to bring up. when we did our Napoleon report last season, Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon, I ended it by suggesting that if people wanted to see a lot of the work that Stanley Kubrick put into Napoleon, you should actually go and watch his movie Barry Lyndon. And people seem to enjoy that, which is why I want to let people know that after the Lord of the Rings project collapsed, now you've alluded to this already at the start of the report here, Bill. John Boorman returned to his first love, which is the Arthurian legend. And in 1981, Boorman releases his acclaimed film, Excalibur. It's a visceral retelling of King Arthur's saga that, according to him, arose out of the ashes of his Tolkien adaptation. Boorman later clarified, "We had done all this prep for Lord of the Rings, and when it didn't happen, I was determined to use it. So I put that prep to good use, honing our Excalibur script." Boorman's collaborator, Rosbo Pallenberg, stayed on board as the co-writer for Excalibur with him, and the pair effectively transposed some of their grand ideas from Middle-earth to the world of Camelot. For example, they'd spent months researching innovative filmmaking techniques like force perspective, how to stage massive battles, optical effects for magic during the Lord of the Rings development, and they now knew exactly how that would be used in Excalibur's production. They even recycled some smaller physical assets that they had been developing, and one of the pieces of set design for Lord of the Rings was actually repurposed in Excalibur. It was called the Lily Library Archives that Boorman had designed for Rivendell that ended up serving as part of Camelot in Excalibur, the drawings and plans that he had made.
Fun. Oh, and that also explains that scene halfway through the movie where he's
where
like,
King Arthur can't get the sword out.
Greedy Lancelot trying to sleep with my wife! Greedy Lancelot sleeping with my wife! You'll awaken a demon, Lancelot!
I never understood that scene.
Yeah, now it makes more sense.
Now it does make more sense. And then he thanks him. It's weird.
As much sense as it makes in the Lord of the Rings script, I guess. So Boorman also retained a lot of the creative team that had been working on his Lord of the Rings for Excalibur. So the production designer, Anthony Pratt, and the cinematographer, Alex Thomas, were all working with him on Lord of the Rings. They would all work with him on Excalibur. And it gave it its distinctive, misty, kind of ethereal look that the film has. Here's what I will say. Here's the difference, I suppose, is when I recommended Barry Lyndon to get a sense of Kubrick's Napoleon, I ended up by saying I went and saw it and I loved it. I will say this. I watched Excalibur when I was prepping this. It is fascinating to see. It's really a visually striking movie. And I can see some of the things he would have used in Lord of the Rings, how they have designed sets. There is this weird kind of like ever-present mist on the ground all the time, and there's these beautiful backlit shots. And for its time, it looks really, really good. But it is not Barry Lyndon. It is a 1981 fantasy film. And it does feel like a 1981 fantasy film. There are some really cool aspects to Excalibur, though. First of all, it stars a young Helen Mirren.
Nice.
This is one of the first Helen Mirren roles. It is also the first film role of Liam Neeson.
Oh, how old is he?
He's
1981.
probably in his 20s, maybe edging 30.
Oh.
And Patrick Stewart is also in this. There is a lot of like
nice
theatre level British actors in Excalibur. But what I love is just even taking a look at the film's Letterboxd account, which is the film social media where people log the films, is a lot of what people were scared of with Lord of the Rings, I feel like come through in some of these reviews. So the top one is by David Sims. He gives it 4 stars. He said, probably the best movie ever that could also be considered a porn parody. Because Excalibur is a sexy, horny movie, much like his Lord of the Rings is.
Gotcha.
It's got a lot of violence and it's got a lot of nudity in it. Patrick Willems also said, maybe cramming the entire Arthurian legend into 2 hours was a bit too much, but man, does it look cool as hell.
Oh, perfect.
A lot of what people were scared of with Lord of the Rings is in Excalibur. It moves at a fucking clip because they get through the entire Arthurian legend.
Oh, well done.
I want to bring us back to Zack Snyder.
Okay.
Because I did say that I thought that Zack Snyder was very inspired by John Boorman in a lot of what he does. And as a fun fact, Zack Snyder, for a short while there, was in charge of the DC universe. And as such, got to recreate the famous Waynes being murdered in the alley after the theater. Normally, in every story, they are leaving either some kind of opera or maybe sometimes it's a screening of Zorro, because Zorro did influence a lot of Batman. In Zack Snyder's version, they are leaving the film Excalibur.
Were they?
They are leaving the 1981 film Excalibur. So if that doesn't tie that Zack Snyder sees himself in a similar vein, I don't know what does.
Oh, that's adorable.
So now we come to the section that we always must come to. Would you want to see this version of the film?
I mean, would I want this version of the film to replace the version we got? No.
Dear God,
no. No, thank you. Would I watch it if it was on right now? Yeah.
Yeah, if you could open a small portal door and there was a little CTR TV playing this on VHS.
Yeah.
Surely you'd sit down and give it a watch.
Yeah. In fact, I think after this, I'm going to go watch the Ralph Bakshi version.
Based on what we've heard here today, I'm really into the acting.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that Galadriel was great.
and the Saruman as well.
Oh, that's
which
Saruman.
we didn't mention was you, Bill. Now, what we should do, I think, is get people to put the Ralph Bakshi on one screen and then Excalibur on the other screen. And between the two of them, the structure and whatnot that was taken from Boorman's for the animated and then the violent horniness of Excalibur. And maybe that is the way to get the best sense of what this would be.
It could be.
What about you, Dani? Would you see this film?
Oh, it would hurt me, but I like a good pain watch every now and again. So you get me in the right mood. It's okay. I have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
Go back to something. We keep talking about how it's a little bit of a horny script in its parts, especially when it comes to the elves. And to me, that raised a big question that maybe some listeners will have wondered as well. Why is it that there was no Arwen in what we've heard today? Because I seem to recall some very curious Arwen moments in the script that I read, and I'm shocked that you didn't think they were strange enough to mention.
Yeah, they only got cut for brevity, I suppose, to try and fit this all in. Arwen is from memory. It's been a few months now since I read it. Quite young.
Yeah, she's described as childlike, and there's some blood kissing that goes on.
Yeah. Not all of what we covered is the totality of the weird fuckery of this script.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there so that everyone was aware. It's there. It's extra weird.
And let's, at this late stage, Boorman's in his 90s. Let's cancel him.
Yeah. Get out of here, Boorman.
Well, we have come to the end of our report on John Boorman's Lord of the Rings. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we would love it if you could subscribe, be it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen. That really helps us get discovered in the charts. It would also be terrific if you could leave us a 5-star rating, or most importantly of all, just tell a friend. We're completely independent here at Cancelled Movie Report, so your support really does mean the world to us. And did we miss anything like Arwen? And what would that be? Please do let us know, because we would love to hear from you. You can always get in touch with us via cancelledmovies@gmail.com or at cancelledmovies on all of the socials. And if there's a cancelled movie project you've always wanted to hear about, why not let us know? You can fill out a form in the episode description, alerting us to a project, and we may just give it the Cancelled Movie Report treatment. I'm Michael Campbell. I've hosted, edited, and produced this episode. I would also like to thank our amazing guests, Bill and Dani. Where can we find more of you?
If you want to check out more of our stuff, there's 2 big places you can go. You can check out Escape This Podcast if you'd like to hear fun guests, including Michael Campbell, and other various cool people on the internet play audio escape rooms run by us. Or you can check out Solve This Murder, where we create playable murder mysteries and try and have a detective solve them live. It is a difficult game to play, but a very fun one to listen to. So Solve This Murder, Escape This Podcast. Google them, they'll be there.
I will say it is quite a stroke of the ego that you mentioned that I was a guest, because you've had some very famous people on your podcast. Some would argue possibly even more famous than me.
Yeah, if you want to hear David Dastmalchian and Steve Agee solve an escape room together, that's a fun listen.
Roughly half the cast of Taskmaster at any given point.
If you need Alex Horn trying to kill an elf at Christmas, but to solve a puzzle, he's there.
He's there. Yes, it's an amazing.
Neil Patrick Harris. He's there 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, it is. It's such a great show. And you've got such a great community around your show as well. But I do really, really hope that people go and check it out. We also have to thank our amazing voice cast, which included Peter Broughton, Marco McVey, Dani Siller, and Bill Sunderland, and myself were all voices in this one. Next week, we're looking at a film that I personally have been wanting to hear about for years and years. We are talking about the controversial DC comic Preacher and its almost cursed journey to the screen. But if you can't wait, here's a sneak peek.
Wait a minute, they're after you. You're the preacher.
Something happened this morning. I'm not sure what.
You killed a church full of people, is what our space says.
Jesse, are you okay?
I don't know. There's something in me. I can feel it. I shouldn't have called you.
What are you talking about?
But until then, take care.